In the mid-90s, the Mega Man X series was completely overshadowing the classic version of Mega Man. The X games were grittier, darker, deeper, and in some cases just better overall. In 1996, Capcom released Mega Man 8. And, well, I don't know. You probably know my feelings on this game. About 8 months later, they released Mega Man X4. And Christmas of 1998 brought me these two games and Final Fantasy VII, along with a brand new PlayStation. If you've watched any of my previous Mega Man media, you may have picked up on the fact that I'm not much of a fan of the 8th entry into the classic series. X4, on the other hand, grew to become one of my favorite Mega Man experiences, but over the years I kinda grew away from it, preferring instead the 16-bit entries. I decided it was high time to do a Mega Man X4 video, mainly because I haven't visited it in quite a while, and I kinda wanted to find out why I lost my preference for it. X4 opens with a super cool animated intro that shows a bunch of characters, old and new. X and Zero look great with a slight update to their designs, and the new characters seem to fit right in with that aesthetic. The music that accompanies the intro is energetic, upbeat, and easily gets caught in my head from time to time. Following the excellent intro, the title sequence opens with a voiceover announcing the name of the game.
Megaman X4.
Such majesty. Wow. In any other Mega Man X game, my first order of business is to change that dash from the A button to the R button, or the circle button in this case. But new console, new buttons, and since PlayStation has two L and R buttons, I can now set my dash to R2 while leaving the sub-weapon scroll buttons to L1 and R1. Works great. And what's this? 2 Mega Buster shot buttons? We'll get to that later. Starting the game gives you the option of playing as Mega Man X or as Zero. While you don't get to switch between the two heroes mid-game, you at least get to play as Zero for more than a few seconds per level. After getting to briefly handle a very clunky Zero in Mega Man X3, Mega Man X4 gives us a much more maneuverable version of Zero who no longer relies on a buster to attack, and instead opts for a light sword that only allows melee attacks. Zero is now a fully playable main character. This is the big appeal of the new X entry. While Mega Man 8 kind of used weird level gimmicks and the obvious new graphics to try to set it apart from its predecessors, X4, on the other hand, uses the ability to choose between two different characters paired with those excellent new graphics. Gorgeous! And Capcom knocks it out of the park. Where Mega Man 8 kind of fell flat on its 32-bit face, X4 vaulted off 8 and catapulted itself into legend. The level design and Robot Masters are crafted very well. Playing either X or Zero gives the player a challenge, but nothing feels broken. Approaching enemies and platforming situations feels fair with both characters, unlike the next attempt at a two-character Mega Man game. X4 relies heavily on action and platforming together, unlike Mega Man 8 that uses those weird level gimmicks I mentioned earlier. It feels just so much more solid than its classic counterpart. X receives abilities through both collecting armor parts and destroying Maverick bosses. This is all pretty standard for X games up until this point. The boots give X an air dash and the new ability to hover in place, which I don't really end up using very often, to be honest. The armor upgrade allows X to perform a Giga attack where he launches himself forward through the air and deals a high amount of damage, which is also actually pretty useless in most situations, maybe less useful as the crash attack in X2. The helmet enhancement allows X to fire uncharged Maverick weapons without consuming weapon energy. This is really useful actually, and I try to go for the headpiece early. And lastly, X has the choice between 2 arm enhancements, storing 4 smaller buster shots that can be shot off at any time, kind of like a gimped version of the enhancement in X3, or 1 super large mega shot that leaves plasma balls in its wake that continues to damage enemies. Best buster ever. You can also unlock an ultimate armor for Mega Man X that gives him all the armor enhancements, with the big charged buster shot, and the ability to infinitely use the Giga attack, after only 1 Dr. Light capsule visit. It makes the game a lot easier. I said the Giga attack was kind of useless earlier, but when you have the ability to use it over and over, it can be pretty broken. The Maverick weapons are hit and miss, but mostly pretty cool. Some highlights include the aiming laser, which allows you to aim the shot with the up and down buttons on the D-pad. Soul Body, which acts as a great shield weapon, and Lightning Web, which can be used to create a wall jump platform in the air. Some others are kind of mundane or useless. I'm not a fan of Magma Dragoon's fire weapon, even if it brings back the Shoryuken when charged. Shooting straight up is not really all that useful here. Back to that option menu item that gives us 2 X-Buster buttons, Mega Man X can now continue to fire his X-Buster while having a Maverick weapon selected. It seems like it could be really useful, but in practice I personally don't use it that often. Maybe paired with a weapon like Rising Fire it could be useful, but I prefer to just switch back to the X-Buster. Habit, I guess. Zero doesn't get the normal Maverick weapons like X does. Instead, he gets different attack abilities that require particular button presses, and some upgrades that can be kind of categorized as the same types of upgrades X gets with his armor pieces, like an air dash and a weapon damage upgrade. I really like Zero's version of Magma Dragoon's weapon. It works like the aforementioned Shoryuken, but because it isn't tied to selecting a sub-weapon, whipping it out during the heat of battle is much more useful. The boss battles are about what you'd expect from a Mega Man game. Mavericks all have patterns and weaknesses that players will have to learn so they can take them on effectively. I really like the Slash Beast fight in particular. It's great because all of the dodging you have to do. The Web Spider fight is kind of fun as well. On the other hand, Jet Stingray's fight kind of blows. He disappears into the air, and if you have his weakness weapon, it just takes forever. His Jet Bite gimmick level, the only gimmick level in the game, really, is kind of annoying with all its insta-death traps, but it can be kind of fun. Throughout the game, Capcom has included animated cutscenes. The animation is really top-notch, but like Mega Man 8, the voice acting isn't the best.
It's about the Maverick Hunters, General. They are far too eager to please the humans and continue to hunt down the Reploids.
At the very least, we don't have an Elmer Fudd-sounding Dr. Light, but the rest is pretty terrible. Zero sounds mostly okay until a famous certain moment.
Iris! Iris! Ah! No, this isn't happening! There's no reason for me to go on. What? What am I fighting for?
Mega Man X sounds just as squeaky as his classic counterpart does, which is stupid.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry. It's all over. Go home and rest. You've earned it.
But Zero!
And the other characters, well, I don't know, Australian Repliforce Colonel sounds okay?
Take heed, we have no other choice.
I don't really touch on stories in Mega Man games too often because, while it seems like they really tried to do a little bit more with Mega Man X4 and add some cutscenes and make things a little more dramatic, still doesn't seem that important. The star of this game is gameplay, which is incredibly solid and responsive. I wouldn't necessarily say it feels better than the SNES games, just kinda different. The heroes control more fluidly, and tearing through the enemies seems to be a lot easier, making the game just seem faster paced than its predecessors. The game is a blast to play. After our heroes defeat all the Maverick bosses, they rush to the final few levels, which take place in an Air Force base, then a space station weapon that threatens the Earth. The final levels are actually pretty disappointing. They're all short and very easy. The focus here seems to be on the boss fights, as there are several. The Colonel fight is kinda tough if you play through as X. This is the second time you face him. But as Zero, it's the only time you will, and Zero's fight with the Colonel is pretty dang tough. Eventually, you fight the Repliforce General, and I really want to include him here because he's huge, imposing, scary looking, and a total pushover. He's so slow and you're so fast, and all his attacks are really easy to avoid, it's kind of a joke. Sigma, however, is pretty tough, especially with Zero in my experience, mainly because of the lack of good long-range weapon. It's an interesting fight though, with some crazy-ass enemy designs that I really dig. When it comes down to it, Mega Man X4 is really good. It's fast-paced and controls very well. Got great graphics, a ton of replayability due to the ability to play two different characters. It's just a damn good PS1 game. I'm pretty upset that more companies didn't stick to the 2D platformer type of game in the 5th generation. Mega Man X4 is proof that 32 and 64-bit systems would have done an amazing job handling such games. Unfortunately, after X4, Capcom decided that making quality Mega Man games just wasn't a priority anymore. Not for some time, anyway. X5 was okay, X6 is a complete and total dumpster fire. And honestly, I haven't played X7 or X8 yet, but I've heard bad things. Sure, Mega Man Legends came out, and a lot of people like that. Then there's the Battle Network games, and some of the Mega Man Zero games, which are admittedly pretty good. But all in all, I mean, X4 was pretty much it. That was the last big, well-regarded Mega Man game for quite a while. That's all I got. I would have to say I really like Mega Man X4. I don't really know why I quit playing it so often and why I lost my preference for it. I still like the Super Nintendo games a little bit better, but this is a damn solid game and everyone should try it out. Later.
Mega Man X4 is one of the best in that line of games. The animated cutscenes allowed for deeper storytelling and offered a perspective from both heroes' encounters. Now, that whole idea of animated cutscenes started with an earlier game, and that was Mega Man 8, a title that most would argue is a little too easy and rather cheesy, but it's one that I'm very fond of. So, come drop by my channel and find out why I think this 32-bit pony can stand on its own.